I started like the camera on my went off, but it's on my yes, it's on my Facebook page now. She should be able to see me. I can see me for whatever that's worth. Hello, Dvora. We'll see you in a few weeks. We haven't seen you in a few weeks. Okay, I forgot. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay. Does she see me now? And Prima Alex is watching us from Sydney. If you're watching on my personal page, feel free to comment so I can just see. Oh, Art is on. Art, Shavua Tov. Art, how are you? Okay, and Gail can see us, and Gail can hear us, and Lori. Oh, hello, Lori. Okay, we're starting. So, you ready? As always, tonight's class is in the memory of Yitzchak Ben Yosef. I have more than one joke to start with tonight. I'll start with a classic Jewish joke. I'm sure I'll get to the other one later in the evening. It's one of the classics. It's a good one. Of this young rabbi who gets a new shul and comes the first week on Shabbat and during the services. Comes time for the reading of the Shema. And some of the people in the room insist on standing up for the Shema. And some people want to say the Shema sitting down. The problem is that each of us says something in the other group, you're doing it wrong. Stand up. And then they say, oh, sit down, stand up, sit down, stand down. You know how it goes. And everyone's busy telling the other person what to do. And it's getting a little problematic in the room and back. And every week, there's another argument. If they should stand up for the Shema, they should sit down for the Shema. Should they stand up? Should they sit down? And the rabbi can't handle it. He says, I have to already from the beginning, they're already arguing in shul and they're fighting in shul and there's a whole debate. Every week comes the Shema. Some people are standing, some are sitting. They tell them to stand. So he decides that's it. I'm getting to the bottom of the situation. He finds out that in a nearby assisted living facility, there's one of the founding members of the shul from the very beginning, from the beginning of the traditions of the shul. So he decides to make a formal delegation of some of the stand-up members of the shul and some of the sit-down during Shema members of the shul, and they'll all go together to the old age home and they'll go meet this senior member of the community who is one of the founding members, and find out what's the shul custom, to stand or to sit during the Shema. Okay? They all go, the rabbi and everything will come. The rabbi says, tell me, is it true that the custom of the synagogue is to stand during the Shema? And the man thinks for a second, says, no, that's not the custom. So, you see? So the other group says, is it not the custom in the shul that we sit down during the Shema? And the old man thinks, no, that's not the custom either. So the rabbi says, so what's the custom? Because now every week everyone screams at each other and shouts at each other to stand, to sit. That was the custom. Okay, Michelle approves. Okay. Steve is a little... Okay, so Marsha is on. She's watching us. Good evening, Marsha. Good evening, Art. Good evening, everyone watching Chabad.org from all over the world. Glad to see you on. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about the beginning of arguments, the beginning of the Jewish custom to argue and to debate. Yeah, it's not a very happy beginning. The story actually doesn't have a happy ending either, unfortunately. But I'm going to say the story tonight from a different perspective. The story is the story of Korach. That's this week's story. It's the story of a man that led a revolution and a revolt against Moses, against Moshe. And the story is I shouldn't call it a classic story, but it's a well-known story. It's a painful story. It's a sad story in the journey of the Jewish people through the land, through the desert. But tonight we always look for the human angle in the story, and how it relates to us. I want to give the angle or the perspective of the 250 followers of Korach who went along in the argument. As I'm going to explain in a few minutes, although there were many people that were fighting against Moses, and many people fighting against Aaron, and demanding that there should be change, and that anyone should become a high priest, etc., we'll go through the arguments in 2 minutes. Although their arguments are the same, the motivation and the inner drive, the inner ambition of different groups of people is not the same. Not the same. So the main instigator here, the main leader and culprit is the leader, Korach. He's the main person. He gets all the attention, really. He's the one that's always presenting the arguments. He's the one standing on stage making the case. And he's the one that we normally talk about as the fighter against Moses. Behind him, the deputies of fighting, if you will, are two men called Dasan and Aviram. Dasan and Aviram are also terrible, terrible troublemakers. People that cause terrible anguish for Moses. From even before Moses was Moses, when he was still the young prince in the palace of Pharaoh, and he killed the Egyptian taskmaster for beating a Jew. And then the next day he went out and he saw two men fighting with each other. And we tried to intervene and stop the fight. One man said to the other, one man said to him, "Are you going to tell on us what you told on what you killed? Are you going to kill us out of what you killed the Egyptian taskmaster?" And to get revenge on Moses, they go and they tattle on Moses to Pharaoh and almost have Moses killed, if not for the fact that God does a miracle and saves his life. These two men are Dathan and Abiram. Last year, on this week, we did a whole class on Dathan and Abiram, the second in command, who have a whole different agenda. They just hate Moses. They don't care about the priesthood. They don't care about the incense. They don't care about holiness. Their agenda is any way we can fight against Moses, sign us up. There are people like that. People that thrive off hate. They thrive off anger, and they're bitter. They have an agenda against Moses, and they're looking for an opportunity to get back at someone they don't like, someone who's the leader, not them. And when the opportunity arises, they just jump on the bandwagon. They don't even care what it's about. They're looking to us, Dathan and Abiram, and why they're full of hate and why they hate Moses and how to deal with that was last year's. Below them are 250 men. Now these men, the Torah tells us, are righteous men. They were good men, had good intentions, they had a desire for holiness. These are the leaders of the congregation. And these men get sucked into the arguments and the drama and the arguments of Korach, and they become so enthralled and so entrenched in the arguments of Korach that even when they realize it's not going to work out for us, they're no longer able to extricate themselves from this debate, and they end up dying, as we'll soon. We'll go through the story and we'll see what happens to them. And ultimately, our objective in our conversation tonight is to understand these 250 men. That Korach was power hungry, and that Korach wanted to fight against Moses because he felt that Moses was using nepotism and was taking a job that should have been given to him. Let me just explain for a minute. Korach felt that Moses had deliberately bypassed him in giving out the jobs and the roles of authority in the Jewish people. Because Kohath had 4 sons. The oldest son was Amram, the father of Moses and the father of Aaron. So Amram, the oldest of the sons, he gets 2 main leadership positions. But at least Korach felt the leadership of the tribe of Levi, because each tribe has its own leader. So besides for leading the entire Jewish community, the entire people, at least to be the leader of the tribe of Levi should go to me, the oldest grandson from the second son. So Korach, the son of Yitzhar, is the second son. So there's Amram and then there's Yitzhar. So Yitzhar's oldest son, me, should get at least leadership of the tribe of Levi. What does Moses do? Based on God's command, he skips the family of Yitzhar, skips the third son, and goes to the youngest son of Kohath, whose name was Uziel. He makes his son Elitzaphan, the son of Uziel, become the leader of the tribe of Levi. And that was already too much for Korach to handle. He felt totally slighted. And so Korach, at the core of his argument, that's what he says, for what he's feeling. And remember, it's what you say, and it's what's really driving you on the inside. What's the real agenda? What's really driving Korach is an anger against Moses for what he feels is nepotism, for slighting him, for skipping him. And Korach wants to take the role, not of leader of the tribe of Levi anymore. He wants the job of Aaron. He wants to become the high priest. He wants high priest. That's the job he wants, and he's out to get it. And of course, he has a very good argument. We'll go through some of them in a minute. And he wants that job. But what we want to understand tonight, and the real takeaway of our conversation, is going to be to understand the other 250 men. The 250 men that didn't think they would become the Kohen Gadol. They didn't think they would become the high priest. Now, we're going to first talk about the arguments that convinced them. What were they told? What did they buy into? But then we're going to understand, we'll look at a Mishnah, and we'll try to understand how does the Torah and the Talmud define the kind of fight of Korach and his congregation, these men, the Ada, the group of Korach, and obviously how we can take for ourselves, not to get stuck in arguments. And this is true both in arguments, in fights with family, with friends, in politics, you'll see very clearly what I'm going to describe tonight, how it's so true in political discourse, whether it's in America or in Israel, the same kind of discourse. We'll talk about all that soon. Okay, so good evening, everyone that's watching. We're going to start at the very beginning. Some people on Chabad.org, I love it. Hello, everyone from all over, from Australia, from, thank you, Sandra, and Erev Tov, Joe, and whatever, from Maryland, from Alice. It's good to see you all. Christine from New York. Okay, we're going to start. I'm going to share my screen if you're watching my page. From the beginning of the parasha, the description, the opening description of this man called Korach. So chapter 16, verse number 1, the Torah tells us, Vayikach Korach. And Korach took, the son of Yitzhak, the son of Levi, took himself to one side. And normally you don't use the word took. Say, if you're fighting someone, you went, you're going. He took himself. I'll explain those words in a second. He took himself, along with Dasan and Aviram, the sons of Eliav, and On, the son of Pelas, descendant of Reuben. He confronted Moses, together with 250 men from the children of Israel, chieftains of the congregation, representatives of the assembly, men of repute. So this verse is important because I want you to realize that the Torah is giving a very honorable description and an honorable title to these 250 men. They're not riffraffs. They're not like losers that are just bored and looking for some kind of an excuse to join. These are men that the Torah tells us are the leaders of the congregation, chieftains of the congregation, representatives of the assembly, Anshe Shem, which means men of good name, men of, translate here, men of repute, men of renown, of prestige. And they assembled against Moses and Aaron, and they said to them, Rav Lochem, you're taking too much upon yourselves, for the entire congregation, all are holy, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you raise yourself above the Lord's assembly? The argument Korach is making is a very smart argument. All the Jews were standing at Mount Sinai. All the Jews heard when at Mount Sinai, what did God tell the Jewish people? That you will be for me a mamlechas kohanim v'go kadosh. Those were the words of God. Mamlechas kohanim means a priesthood, a nation of priests, a holy nation. So God himself at Mount Sinai told the Jewish people that each and every one of you will be priests. And all of you are a holy nation. You're all holy. That's what God said. And now Moses is coming and saying, no, you're not holy. Only Aaron, the high priest, is holy. If you want to bring a sacrifice, you got to go to Aaron, to the high priest. So the argument that Korach is making, and it's a very simple and a very well-sourced argument, is God himself told us that every Jew is holy, every Jew can be a priest, every Jew can have a relationship with God, and you're coming and you're taking all the authority and all the holiness and all the leadership position of being our intermediary with God, taking it for yourself. That's the root of his argument, and really he wants to be the high priest himself. But what he's going to convince the 250 men is we all could be priests. We're all holy. Now, of course, it's not what Korach wanted. I want to make sure this is clear. Korach didn't want 250 high priests. He wanted only one high priest, which would be him. And he understands that there could only be one high priest. And many of the arguments that he makes, trying to make fun of this idea of one high priest, he knows that that's not the way Judaism works. But he knows that he thinks he's going to succeed. I'll pause for a minute. Why does he think he'll succeed? Korach actually saw prophetically, he was a very holy man, Korach. He saw prophetically that he had righteous grandchildren, great-grandchildren who will be born from him. Most famously, Shmuel HaNavi, Samuel the prophet. Samuel the prophet will be a descendant of Korach. So Korach was sure he's not going to die in this debate. He's pretty sure he's safe, he's going to be good. The other men will die, but that's collateral damage. That's what did our friend from Hamas say? That it's the cost of war, whatever, right? To have people die and whatever. That's fine with him. He doesn't care. So he thinks he's going to succeed. He's going to win. He's going to become the new high priest, and that's what he's very excited about. But what I want to focus for a second is let's first look at the opening words that Rashi explains. Vayikach Korach. Korach took. The word he took is a very interesting expression. He took himself. You ever took yourself somewhere? You took yourself to class now, right? You don't take yourself somewhere. You take your teenage kids when they're fighting with you. So what did he took? So Rashi tells us he took himself to one side to disassociate himself from the congregation, to contest the appointment of Aaron to the kahuna, to the high priest. This is what Onkelos means when he renders the word ishpalek. He translates the word, he separated himself. He separated himself from the congregation to persist in a dispute. So here's the first thing I want to point out, that Korach is not just arguing with Aaron and with Moses. He's deliberately choosing to engage in a debate that he will not go away from. He's taking himself to a place of division. He's taking himself to a place where this is my stand, and this is where I'm going to be. And if you look at the words of Rashi, he's moving himself to the side to be separate from everyone else to fight. He's getting ready. Right before you go fight, we got to get into position, right? So he's getting into position. So that's Korach. Now on the other side, or not the other side, below him, so we have these 250 men, and these 250 men they're good men. They're righteous men, they're leaders of the tribes, they're men of greater renown. So how did they get mixed into this whole problem? So Rashi tells us something very interesting, which is that they lived on the south. If you remember, we're in the very middle. We discussed this, I don't know if on Monday night. Sure, in the morning, after that, we go through the Torah reading. In the middle, you have the Mishkan, the way that you just camp. And then on the four sides of the Mishkan, you have the three families of the Levites and then the priests. And around them, on each side, you have three tribes. Okay? So on the south side of the Mishkan, who's camped on the south side of the Mishkan, which is on this side, this is the Mishkan who's on the south. On the inner circle was the family of Kohath. Well, Kohath is one of the descendants of Kohath is Korach. And then further on the south is Reuben. So because Reuben lived on the south next to Korach, this is what it says, Oy l'rasha, oy l'shchina. Woe to the wicked, woe to his neighbor. Woe to the wicked, woe to the neighbor. Because he lived next to this wicked, because the people of Reuben lived next to Korach, therefore the kind of got sucked in along with his negativity, with his complaining, with his fighting against Moses. And they also got stuffed along, and they also became part of this revolution against Moses. Okay, by the way, the flip side of the coin is not quoted in Rashi, but the flip side of the coin is where it says, Tov l'tzadik, Tov l'shchina, which means good for the tzaddik and good for the neighbor of the tzaddik. And that's a reference to the tribe of Yehuda and Yisachar. They were on the east side next to Moses and Aaron and the priests. So they were living next to good neighbors, and they ended up a very righteous tribe. So let's continue the story now. Let's get some of the juicy details before we get to the sad ending. Korach is going around. When Moshe says to them, he tries to convince them not to do it. And he says, we'll make a contest. What will be the contest? Tomorrow, we'll bring incense. And I warn you now, only one person that brings incense is going to live from this contest. So he was hoping that they'll have overnight. It's not good to argue on the spot when they're heated up. Come back tomorrow when you had a chance to calm down a little bit, and I'm going to do a contest. Now, you have to remember that the people already know the danger of the incense. How do they know the danger of the incense? Which famous people brought incense and died? Exactly. Very good. There's 5 people in this room. Nadav and Avihu, very good, are the 2 sons of Aaron. And on the day of the inauguration of the Mishkan, when the Shekhinah was revealed and God's presence was felt within the camp, and all the Jews saw the fire of God coming down on the Mizbeach, 2 sons of Aaron, priests. They weren't even like random people. They were priests. Next in line. And they got so excited and so full of ecstasy and spiritual elevation, and they couldn't contain themselves, and they took pans of unauthorized incense, and they went into the temple, or without permission, and they brought incense that they had not been commanded to bring, and fire from heaven came and destroyed them, and they would die. So the Jews already know that if you bring incense you're not supposed to, it's not going to be a happy ending. This is not a new threat of Moses. They've already seen this happen first time. And yet, so he thinks that they're going to come back. Instead, that night, Korach does what every politician does. What does he do? He has a rally. Well, he did better than a rally. He did better than a rally. Politicians do rallies, and what else do they do? They rally for the masses. They have private fundraising dinners. With good food and and I don't know, and nice wine, and so he had a dinner. He had a party because he had food. I mean, Jews don't just go to rallies. We want food. We want a dinner. If you want to convince me to join your camp, you got to feed me. You know what I'm saying? Americans are easy to convince. You just got to get them, make them screw shop. Jews, they want food along with the rally. So he has a big party, the food and drink and wine. And at the party, he's mocking Moses. And there's many things he does to mock Moses. Very, very quickly, for example, he puts all, tchelis is the blue string on the tzitzit, where. So he gives them all a garment full of blue string. The whole garment is tchelis, the blue. Then he says to Moses, tell me, does this blue garment, the whole garment is blue, does it need a string on the edge of it? The laws you do. So you're laughing, a garment of blue. Says, what about a room full of Torah scrolls? We're in the synagogue, there's 2 Torah scrolls behind me. Do we need a mezuzah on the door? Mezuzah is 2 paragraphs. One little piece of the scroll. The Torah is the whole thing. If you have a room full of Torah scrolls, you still need a mezuzah. And the whole point is you still need a leader. But I want to show you a different, less well-known argument of Korach, and it brings out a little bit the idea of how Korach is such a professional politician who knows how to use imagery to be able to play on the hearts of the people that he's trying to entice. And it's important to remember that these men were not just lowlifes. They actually meant well. They meant so. No, not Korach. The other men, the other 250 men. So the Medrash says like this. What happens? The Medrash says that Moshe comes to. They have this party. Okay, and the party he has a lot of meat. So Aaron or his sons come to collect the meat. And when you have meat, you have to give part to the Kohen. And he starts to mock him. And he says the following. He gives a whole sob story, but I want to give you a little bit of introduction, okay? By Torah law, ready for this introduction? The whole cup is holding will be for 1 minute. I'm going to give you a lot of laws, but if you know these laws, the story will go much easier. By Torah law, when you have a field, you have to leave the corner of the field, and the pieces that fall when you're harvesting, and the things that you leave behind, you leave it for the poor, for the widow, for the orphan, etc. In addition to that, you have other laws with the priests who did not generate any income. They didn't have jobs or land. Their entire purpose was only to serve the people. They got the truma, they got the mice, they got tithes, etc. And then you have the sheep of a person. The first time you shear the sheep, wool is given to the Kohen the first time. In addition, the firstborn animal of a wool of a sheep or a cow is given not on the other animal, just sheep and cow and camels actually, something else, are given to the Kohen. In addition, when you slaughter a bull or a cow, not on the other animals, the cheek and the cheek and the maw and the shoulder are given to the Kohen. And if a Jew says this is forbidden to me, he says something, I make a vow not to have any benefit from this, it goes to the temple. Okay? So, Elazar, the son of Aaron, comes to this party. He starts to mock him. And he says, I want to tell you guys, and also you can't, whatever. So he said, I'll tell you a story about a widow. There's a widow, her husband died, she's all alone, and so she starts to plow her fields. And along came Moses and said to him, you can't plow with your horse. She had a horse and a donkey. It's called kilan. You can't use this together. You can't use them. So what does she do? So she says, okay, I won't plow them. I won't do them together. She says, you can't use mixed seeds together. Okay, I won't do that. She plants the field. He comes and warns her. Can't take the corn of your field. You can't take the things you left behind. All these restrictions. Finally, she harvests what she harvests. Along comes the Kohen. Along comes the priest to get the truma. And along comes the Levite to get the tithe, to get the meiser. And she sees I'm giving away all of my income from the field. I can't do this. Let me sell the field. I'll buy some sheep instead. So she buys some sheep, and she goes to shear the sheep, and right away Aaron shows up. The priest shows up to get the first shearing. And then the sheep gives birth. The firstborn sheep has to give to the priest. She says, it's too much for me. So she slaughters the sheep. And right away, again, the priest shows up to get the cheek and the shoulder and the mouth. So it's too much. I can't have any benefit from this. So the priest says, perfect. If you don't want benefit from it, then it's forbidden to you. It goes to the temple and so on. And the poor widow, says Korach, is left crying with nothing. Dramatic story, right? Esther's giving a look like that's a terrible story. Terrible story. And Korach is very descriptive. He's very charismatic. This whole drama about this story in front of Aaron. And obviously, everyone's laughing, and they all think that it's. And basically, what's the point? The point is, Korach has just totally corrupted all the laws of Torah to create this like dramatic story. When what is the reason why there are these laws in the first place? To protect the widow and the orphan. Why can she not use the leket and the shikha to pay the forgotten sheaves and all that? So the poor and the orphan and the widow has where to get food from. And he's using the very laws that are defending the widow to make known the poor widows being oppressed by Aaron. And the fact that the priests don't have their own lands and they serve the people, that's for the benefit of the people. But the point is, what is Korach doing over here? Like any demagogue, like any convincing politician, he doesn't care about the facts or about using logic. All he wants to do is create a feeling of emotional guilt for this woman. He wants to get this feeling of emotional anguish that this woman is being terrorized, and poor woman, how could it be? It's terrible. Again, he's corrupting all the laws. And once Korach is able to paint this sad picture of this helpless poor widow being terrorized by the system and by Korach and by the Aaron, the high priest, and the people of power and the establishment, all of these good, well-meaning leaders of the community, Anshe Shem, men of repute, men of good name, all these righteous people feel the need to stand up and to defend her and to join Korach in fighting for this woman. He couldn't kill us over this woman. This woman's a made-up woman. But this is the way he's convincing the people to join him in the revolution against Moses, who is nothing but fight for them.
That doesn't change the law.
Doesn't change the law.
The law is the law. When Korach paints this picture, not what's going to change if Korach was to...
Correct. The whole revolution won't change anything. The law would not change in any way, shape, or form. Absolutely correct. Correct. And you would also think they would figure out that they're not going to become high priest. And they should know that they're going to die. They already know from Nadav and Avihu they're going to die if they bring the incense. But Korach was so eloquent and so convincing that he convinced them. He says to them, I took out the Rashi, I actually had it in the original, but I wanted to put it on one page to get up. He says to them, when he gathered them, he says, you think I'm fighting for me? He says, I'm fighting for you. I'm not, I don't care. This is not for my benefit. I'm here, I'm fighting for the people. I'm fighting. Now, again, that's not his real motivation, but he presents himself as if his only motivation, all he wants is to defend the people. That's his only objective. He's so holy, so altruistic, so so devoted to the cause. That's how he presents himself. Remember, it's important to understand how he's presenting himself. And what happens is he creates a sense of division. Remember those words by Yikach Korach. He took himself. He places himself onto a side of separation and division. And he begins to tell the people, not this law is not a good law, not that we should feel compassion for the orphan or for this widow, but rather Moses is trying to get you guys. Moses is the problem. Moses is the one that's stopping happiness, and it's all Moses. And if we would override Moses and we're able to put him in this place and take away his ability to give nepotism and to make his brother the high priest, then nothing. The law wouldn't change anyway. He didn't say then. He didn't say the word then. He says it's all about, he changes the discussion from being about what he wants to accomplish to instead being about how Moses is bad. Understand that? Okay? If the discussion was about how do we help a widow and an orphan, well then we should actually keep the law that a widow and an orphan can come take the corners of the field and the forgotten sheaves. But that's not the point. His point is to fight Moses. So yes, he's using these emotional arguments, but what does it boil down to? What's his objective? To demonize Moses because he wants the authority for him. Okay. Can you imagine? Can you relate to that in today's times at all? Just slightly? Today we don't have discourse at all about ideas or about how the other person is terrible, the other person, the other politician, the other leader, the other they're the wicked one. They're the wicked one. And so what happens, let me finish the story, and then I'm going to go to my real takeaway here. What happens is, so all night, he feeds them, he gives them wine, he makes them loyal to him, and all night he mocks I should have left the Rashi in. Words of latzanos, words of mockery. Those are the words of Rashi. Words of mockery, making fun of Moses, and saying, I'm only here to fight for you. Comes the morning, and all these men, they come back with the pans. He donated the pans of incense, by the way. It wasn't even their pans. 250 silver pans. Korach was a very, very wealthy man. He was wealthy. He found the hidden treasure of Yosef in the treasury from Pharaoh. He took the treasury for himself. He was one of the wealthiest Jews was Korach. But that wasn't enough for him being a billionaire, whatever. It wasn't enough. And so he gives each one of these people pans, and they all take the pans and they come before the temple. Again, they should have known they're going to die. There's only one man that was saved from this. Side note, but an interesting side note. His name is On. On is the only one who's saved. You know why he was saved? He had a smart wife. That's the truth. It's not a joke. That's the truth. The Talmud tells us, the Medrash tells us, that On came home that night, late at night from the party. Everyone's been at the party. So it's what's going on. So it says Korach, he's doing the whole thing, and Moses. And his wife, the wife that hadn't bought into the whole hysteria and the whole hype of Korach, said, then what do you think is going to happen tomorrow? You're not going to win. You're going to die. Only Korach will become the high priest. You're still going to remain a regular person. I missed one thing. He also played a lot. The reason why Reuben, the tribe of Reuben, got hyped into more than other tribes is because who was meant to be the priest serving in the temple? Reuben, the firstborn. And because the firstborn had sinned with the golden calf, God, it wasn't God. It was Moses. God told Moses to do it, to take away the priesthood from the firstborn and to give it to the priest, to the tribe of Levi that had not sinned with the golden calf. So who's most sensitive to this injustice of Moses coming and sort of stealing their thunder and stealing their position of authority? Who's most sensitive to this? Reuben, the firstborn. So they're all up against Moses. They're all up against Moses. So let's go back to the story. So On's wife tells On, you're going to die. And he realizes the truth. Now that he's home, his wife knocks some sense into him. He said, but it's too late. I already committed to Korach's men. They're going to come tomorrow. And here you see how the other men may have, this Medrash tells the story of this one man, but it may have been the others as well. He says, I can't. I'm already a party member. I already bought my membership. I already promised to be there. I can't turn the guy down. I can't chicken out now. I'm already too committed. And this is step number 2 in the process. First, you go from arguing for an idea or arguing for a cause, and you suddenly start arguing against your opponent. And then you become so bought into your team, into your people, your friends, I can't let them down. I can't just walk away from what I've been fighting for. I spent all night screaming and shouting at the rally, 4 more years, I'll lock her up, lock him up, whatever. Now I'm going to walk away from that. I can't. I was screaming it all night. So, On's wife was very smart. You know what she did, this Medrash says? She gave him a sleeping pill. She gave him some, I don't know, a drug, a little Benadryl. She gave him whatever. She gave him something. She gave him some good wine. He fell asleep. And in the morning, when Korach's men came to get him, she and her daughter sat outside the front of the tent with their hair uncovered in a very immodest way. And they didn't want to come close because they were sitting there immodestly. So because his wife and his daughter were sitting outside immodest, the men didn't come to the tent to wake him up, and everyone went to the showdown in front of the temple, except for On, who was fast asleep because his wife put him to sleep, knocked him out, and stopped anyone from waking him up. And the Medrash actually says that there were 2 men that listened to their wives, one to be saved and one to be brought to his downfall. On would have died, but because of his wife, he was saved. And who was the other one? He's not a Jew. No, not the other person was Haman.
Yes.
Haman, he came home all upset at Mordechai, and it was his wife that told him, go build the gallows right now to go kill Haman, to go kill Mordechai. It ended up being the very gallows that he built for Mordechai by his wife's direction and encouragement, ended up being the gallows that he was hung on himself. So the one man was saved because of the wisdom of his wife, and one man was hung because of the greed and the envy of his wife. So you gotta know which wife to have, you know what I'm saying? to listen to that. Anyway, so comes the morning, they all show up with their donated blue tunics and with their pens. And one last time, Moshe tries to convince them to please give up. And now we see that they're really fighting. He tries to go one last time. I didn't copy the text, but he tries to go one last time to Dustin Aviv to try and negotiate. Try and ask them to even come. You know what happens? He comes, he sends a message to Dustin Aviram. He says, come meet with me. Come, let's talk. Let's talk. And you know what they respond? They respond with very, very sharp words. They say to him as follows. They say to him that is it not enough? They said, lo nala, we will not go up. Now they didn't know how right they were. They said, we will not go up. They ended up going down into purgatory, to hell, alive. You all know the story, right? The earth opened up and they went down. They said, we won't go up. You won't go up. You're right, you'll go down. But they say as follows. Is it not enough that you took us out of the land flowing with milk and honey, referring to Egypt, and you brought us here to kill us in the desert, so you want to have authority over us? Even if you will poke at our eyes, we will not go up the top. Understand? Here comes a level of intensity where it's not just that I'm arguing against you, I have a personal vendetta against you. It's not just that I can't listen to you because I have to stay loyal to my team, so I can't ever admit to you even when you're right. I won't even talk to you. Dustin Aviram won't even talk to Moses. They say, even if you poke at our eye, we refuse to talk to you. At that moment, Moses realizes there's no hope. There's nothing he can do to save these people. There's no way he can ever help them or save them. And so he turns to God and says, God, before their mutiny spreads further and has more of an impact, even more people, I'm begging you, I'm praying to you, destroy them in a way that it's clear and obvious that you're doing this because everything I said was by your mouth. Nothing I did was on my own. If they die a regular, natural death, they just die, lightning comes out of the sky, it doesn't prove that it's from me. That it's from you, sorry. But if you do something that never, ever happened before, and if you open up the earth to swallow them alive, to prove that everything that I said was only from your mouth, there'll be the ultimate proof of the righteousness of your ways. That could happen. And there's a lot of explanation why you open the mouth of the earth. They open their mouth to speak negative against Moses, and therefore the earth opened its mouth to swallow them. Every punishment is measure for measure. You suffer what you did. You spoke bad, you get swallowed up in the earth. They went down, whatever. I don't want to get distracted on that. The earth opens up everywhere. And wherever Korach and his men, not his men, Korach and Zavir and their families and their wealth was, the earth opened up like all over throughout the camp. Wherever things were, and swallowed it into the earth alive. And then after that, actually a fire came up from God and burnt Korach also. But they swallowed it up, never mind. I read a message he was burnt up, but they for sure went down alive. That was part of their punishment. The Medrash says, interesting, I'm just thinking about it now. The Medrash says he suffered both punishments. He suffered the punishment of the men, he was burnt, and he was swallowed alive. But anyway, the 250 men, here's what we want to talk about. The 250 men, they see this all happening, and after the earth swallows Korach and his men alive, you know what happens? Torah tells us at the end of the chapter, the final verse, you know what happens to these 250 men? Verse 35, fire came forth from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who had offered up the incense. They're finito. They are no more. It's not like another Navi that only their souls are burned and their body was not burned. These 250 men are completely consumed before God. They disappear. They're burnt up entirely. Nothing is left from them, and they were never even buried. Unlike the other Dustin, Avir, and Korach that are swallowed up alive, not buried, but they're swallowed up alive, these are not buried. They're burnt up and they're consumed by God. They're consumed by God. So their end is that they are left with nothing. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yes.
Their end is worse than Korach.
No, Korach is worse because Korach was swallowed up into the ground to suffer. Korach, listen, the Medrash says that in order you shouldn't think that their punishment was worse than Korach. Korach suffered both punishments. He was burnt and he went down to hell alive. I don't know how that makes sense. But he had both.
It didn't come right back up.
His sons did teshuvah. We're not talking about his sons tonight. His sons did teshuvah. His sons repented. They realized that the father was wrong, and because of the teshuvah in their heart, they were swallowed by the ground. They didn't actually verbally repent openly, but internally they did. So externally they were swallowed up by their father. There was a shelf where they stayed, and they would sing the praises of God, and they heard them sing the praises of God, and later they came back up, and their descendants, as I said, become Samuel the prophet. I wanted to share with you, what? No, the other 250, they don't know. 250, they didn't want to do teshuvah. It was the sons of Korach who realized the mistake of their father, but they couldn't publicly go against their father.
Oh, okay.
They realized it in advance. They confessed in their heart, they did a teshuvah in their heart, but publicly they didn't state their regret against their disagreement with their father. So that's why publicly it looked like they died with their father, but internally, under the closed surface, they were kept alive. Now, I want to, before I go to explain more about today, how people argue, I want to read to you a very interesting Mishnah, Ethics of Our Fathers, that will shed a lot of light on understanding the way Korach men argued, okay? So the Mishnah, the Ethics of Our Fathers, the rabbis of the Talmud, tell us something very interesting regarding arguments. Do you want a joke before I say, let's do a quick joke. So two men are arguing. Come to the rabbi and say, Rabbi, we need your help. And they went screaming, you're a ganav, you're a thief, you stole from me, you lied to us. I never lied to you, I'm telling you, I'm honest. They come to the rabbi and say, Rabbi, we need your help, educate our case. Okay? They come in, the rabbi sits down. So the first guy says, tell me, isn't black a color? Says to the rabbi, isn't black a color? The rabbi's thinking, like, there's a trick question here. Says, yeah, black is a color. Says, yeah, and isn't white also a color? Says, yeah, white's a color. So the man turns to the other guy and says, you see, black and white are both colors. I did sell you a color TV. Okay. Okay, great. That was my first argument joke, but then I had the classic. So anyway, what does the Mishnah Pirkei Avos tell us about arguing and about Korach? The Mishnah in chapter 5 of Ethics of Our Fathers tells us any dispute, any fight, any argument that is l'shem shemayim, for the sake of heaven, will in the end endure. But one that is not for the sake of heaven will not endure. Let's give an example. What's an example of a fight, of an argument that's l'shem shemayim, for the sake of heaven? Ask the Mishnah, what is the controversy that is for the sake of heaven? The controversy of Hillel and Shammai. You heard of Hillel and Shammai, right? Two of the most famous rabbis are always debating areas of Jewish law. For example, do we light 8 candles on the menorah and then do 7, 6, 5, 4? Or do we light 1 candle, 2, 3, 4, 5? Just for example, a very famous example you all know. That's the debate of Hillel and Shammai. So since they're fighting for the sake of heaven, their controversy will endure. But what's the controversy not for the sake of heaven? Listen to the following words. This is the machlekes Korach v'chol ados. The controversy of Korach and all his congregation, those other 250. What's missing from this statement? Hillel and Shammai fought against each other, right? So if I'm telling you about a controversy, how do I describe the controversy? Say two people are arguing. How do you describe two people arguing? Hillel and Shammai are arguing with each other, right? Jack and Jill are arguing. The argument of Jack against Jill. That's the joke. I'll tell you in a second. How do you describe, and that's how the Mishnah describes the controversy that's for the sake of heaven, is a controversy between two men, Hillel and Shammai. It became two schools of thought. Hillel and Shammai. The school of Hillel, the school of Shammai. But when it's describing the controversy that's not for the sake of heaven, it's not bringing two sides here. It's just as a controversy of Korach and all of his congregation. It should say the controversy of Korach and Moses. That's the controversy. It was Moshe or Aaron against Korach. And yet, there's a brilliant insight over here. The Mishnah is telling us something very, very, very important. What is the difference, my friends, between an argument that's for the sake of heaven and the argument that's not for the sake of heaven? In the argument for the sake of heaven, we're looking for truth. We're searching for the truth. And when I'm arguing with you over what is true and not true, I need to hear what you have to say to find the truth. Because what's at stake here is not power, but truth. So I'm willing to hear you and hear your point. And if you're right, I don't lose because now you presented to me an idea, a perspective, a truth that I didn't think of before. So I don't lose by hearing you, and I don't lose by accepting your argument, because what I'm fighting for is truth. But when the argument is not for the sake of heaven, it's an argument of Korach, which is for my own self-fulfillment, my self-aggrandizement, my own career, my own benefit, my own power, etc. So what are we fighting for now? For power. I have no interest in listening to your side of the discussion, to your side of the argument, because I'm not looking for truth. What am I looking for? My self-justification, my own power, my own righteousness. And because it's only my side of the argument, I'm not arguing against you. I'm arguing to prove me. That's all I'm arguing for. The words of the Mishnah are brilliant. Hillel and Shammai were arguing against each other. So Hillel was arguing with Shammai, but he was arguing against Shammai. So you heard what Shammai said. And that's what he was arguing. I hear your perspective, here's my perspective, and we're going to come to the ultimate truth from hearing both sides. Korach wasn't arguing against Moshe. That's how he started. Korach was arguing for himself. He was arguing for himself. And because he was arguing for himself, there was no other side to the argument. This is Korach and his congregation self-fulfilling each other, and this is what we call today an echo chamber. Let me give you an example in modern day politics. So last week there was a big debate, right? 50 million people watched the debate. All the discussion about the debate, not only this one, how old the men, how old our president is and all that, but in general, every time we have a debate, what's the whole discussion? Who won the debate? Who won? That's the way we frame the whole, who won the debate. Why is this who won the debate? It's not about who said something smart in the debate, or who said something true, or who had a better solution to a problem. They don't even come to debates to offer solutions. 7 days he was in Camp David, the president was preparing for the debate. He wasn't preparing to offer new ideas or new solutions. He was preparing to prove his way, to win. That's what he was preparing for anyway. He was preparing to win. And that's how every media pundit looks at it and analyzes it. Who won? Who lost? Who got better lines than the other? Who was more aggressive? Who was able to make the other look more stupid, more terrible, etc. That's become the norm of political conversation. That's the accepted standard of discussion is not to talk to each other. No one even pretends like a debate is to talk to each other. The whole objective of the debate is who can do a better job self-proving themselves. That's the definition of political discourse in America today. And Israel is probably no different, not probably, but this is a major problem. Because every debate starts with an argument, starts with a valid or whatever argument. I take that back. Korach was upset. Someone was hurt. Someone was offended. Korach felt he missed the opportunity he should have gotten. He deserved it in his mind, and it was taken away from him in his mind. Again, it wasn't from Moshe, it was from God, but that's what he thought. And then that begins to spiral into a loop, where now it no longer becomes where I'm hurting for a specific reason. Now it's become about me fighting you. And then it becomes about me self-fulfilling myself, improving myself, and justifying why I'm upset, justifying why I'm angry at you, and why I'm fighting you, and why I'm against you, until it's no longer a conversation with me and you. It's not even about me and you anymore. Now it's just about me and the people that are supporting me, my cronies that are with me. And these 250 men with Korach, these 250 men, once they bought into the narrative, once they bought into the sob stories and all that, into the emotional manipulation that Korach gave them, and they were now bought into it, they couldn't even hear Moshe. There was no discussion. There wasn't a possibility for dialogue, because they had already become a self-defeating, a self-contained argument. As the Mishnah describes, who is arguing over here? It's an argument not of two people. It's an argument of Korach and his own men. We're an argument that we're convincing ourselves we're an argument against nobody. That's the way we talk to them. I'm going to tell you a story, a very famous story with Alan Dershowitz. So Alan Dershowitz, it's a very famous clip where he says the story. He says it many times, where he describes where he had he calls the chutzpah to write the Rebbe a very sharp letter. Alan Dershowitz, in his mind, is a very smart guy. He's a smart guy, but he thinks he's smarter than the Rebbe. The Rebbe did something in the 1970s that he felt was very, very wrong. And so he wrote the Rebbe a very strong letter to say, what's what I'm looking for? Criticizing the Rebbe for a mistake. What was the mistake? The Chabad was honoring Jesse Helms. Jesse Helms was, at that time, he was the head of, he had the seat of, I printed out the story, he was the chairman of the Senate's Foreign Relations Committee. And at that time, he absolutely stood for everything that Alan Dershowitz stood against for, including being very anti-Israel. Alan Dershowitz was very pro-Israel. And Jesse Helms, who at that time was the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, was anti-Israel. And now Chabad is honoring Jesse Helms. How could they do that? And so he wrote the letter to the Rebbe that, very chutzpah. I don't know the letter. He said it was a very chutzpah letter. If it was chutzpah, So the Rebbe responded back to him, and he said to him as follows: that today Jesse Helms may be against Israel, but tomorrow, if we know how to approach him and we know how to speak to him, maybe he will turn out to become the champion of Israel. That's what the Rebbe said to Alan Dershowitz. And guess what? Alan Dershowitz says, I have to admit that the Rebbe was right, and the rest is history, and that although he still disagrees with Jesse Helms on some issues, when it comes to Israel, he became a tremendous friend, a tremendous public, proud supporter of Israel in the Senate. What was the Rebbe teaching Alan Dershowitz? Alan Dershowitz created divisions, which is not unique to Alan Dershowitz. I'm not criticizing him because everyone in politics does it. We create sides, create partisan lines, which is the word that the Torah uses to describe Korach beginning the debate. Korach begins, Vayikach Korach. Remember those words, he took. He divided himself. He separated himself. He took himself. What like you have something happen? Started for a reason. But now he says, I am going to fight against Moses. And the moment he made it official, he now took himself to a side, meaning he created himself a partisan position, and this became his position that he would never leave from ever again. You can talk to him, you can offer him, it's not a two-way discussion. There's no dialogue. Even the conversations that would happen afterwards weren't dialogues. They were Korach within his own bubble of cronies that are supporting him, each feeding into each other into a loop that becomes so like quicksand that the other men couldn't escape it. These were reputable men, honorable men, distinguished men. The Torah tells us that they were honorable men. They weren't just people looking for a fight. They had morals, they had ethics, they were strong people. But once they got into this loop of Korach and his Eidah, Korach and his congregation, and once they got set in a certain way, they couldn't back out. You look at the way people talk to each other. You look at the way people fight. Again, politics is the most easy and the most obvious example. And you look at the way people label others so quickly. You're the other camp, and whatever my camp says has to be right. Whatever the person I voted for has to be good, and whatever the other guy says is terrible. Because we're not talking about people anymore. We're not talking about ideas. The whole conversation is about who can prove who can win the debate, who can be right. I read one more letter. I just read this today for the first time. I just out on the Chabad website that they found this letter in June of 1978. 1978, there was a huge Nazi march planned to march through Skokie, Illinois. I actually learned in Chicago for 4 years, and when I first was in Skokie in the Cheder there. So there was a Jew. His name was David Schatz, who was a very close friend of. He wasn't Chabadnik. He was a very close friend of Lubavitch, and he was a very active member of the JD. deal. And of course, he hears that the neo-Nazis are planning a march through Skokie, Illinois. He was, like many Jews, his blood was bubbling and boiling, and he planned on coming with a baseball bat and smashing some skulls. He's JDL. That's how they train, with the brass knuckles and baseball bats. That's what they did. But he wanted some kind of validation as the right thing to do. So he wrote a letter to the Rebbe in 1978, asking the Rebbe for an endorsement or for permission, if it's right. A very lengthy, I saw a copy of the letter, it's a 2-page letter in English, describing why it's important for Jews to come counter-protest and to show the Nazis they're not scared of them. And he writes in the letter that, people say it's only a few thousand. There's 7,000 residents of Skokie, of Chicago, that were Holocaust survivors. So these 7,000, there's 40,000 Jews living in Skokie, 7,000 Holocaust survivors who lost their entire families to the Germans. And you have to remember that the Jews in America failed. He writes to the Rebbe. The Jews in America failed to react. They had good arguments. They failed to react what they should have. And the Zionists did everything they could to hamper the rescue in Europe. And these 7 people who saw how the rest of the world Jewry failed them when their families were being killed are going to see once again that we don't care when the Nazis are marching on the doorstep. Shall we pretend that they're not there? Or shall we do everything in our power to beat their heads in with baseball bats? This is the exact quote of the letter to the Rebbe. What? He wrote to the Rebbe. He wrote it out, a 2-page full speech. Shall we pretend that they're not here, or shall we go bash their heads in with baseball bats? Okay? So how did the Rebbe respond to him? Actually, the Rebbe didn't say no. Not straight up no, because the Rebbe was very smart. The Rebbe told him, first of all, that his general policy is when you ask him questions that impact local decisions, you should ask the local Orthodox rabbis. So go speak to the local rabbis in your community, and they should be the ones to tell you to go back in their head of the meaning. The Rebbe was still telling you no, because obviously no rabbi is saying to go fight with violence, but the Rebbe was like presenting it in a way. It's not for me to decide how you should behave in Skokie. You should ask the local rabbis that understand the. And the Rebbe says to him, here's the way the Rebbe is always able to turn something around and find the positivity in something. And the Rebbe says to him, the fact that you have such a desire to respond shows how much you care and how much energy and activism and passion you have, especially if you're not with a Kohen. So you're a Kohen. Kohens are known to be passionate, known to be they're full of energy, full of passion. And therefore, you should use your energy, use your power to be an example of spreading Torah and mitzvot, especially because priests were given special powers to help spread Torah and mitzvot, and be a living example of words that come from the heart and to the heart. And the Rebbe wasn't saying no or bashing him. He was saying, don't fight against him. Use your power to be a role model, to use your energy in a positive way. At the end of the story, the only 20 neo-Nazis showed up, and there was no approach, no violence, and I guess he obviously listened to the Rebbe. There was no one's head got bashed in. But anyway, here's the takeaway for us. We learn the story of Korach. You have 250 men. Korach had an agenda. Korach wanted power. All the politicians that lead and guide the masses in America today, in the same Israel, they have their own personal agendas and their own vendettas, and they're all looking for power and more power and more power, and then somehow more. That's what they want. That's people on the top. But what about us? The people that are the good people that care. They're men that are altruistic, who believe in the cause, who are convinced. And they hear all this, terrible and whatever. Every politician, they don't tell you facts. They don't tell you solutions. They tell you these heart-wrenching stories, and it's all about finding the one person the one lady that was I don't know, whatever. That's the story, that the face. And by the way, it's very effective. That's the way. If you know anything about marketing, you got to market on the story, not. But we have to not be like the men of Korach. 250 men of Korach, they got sucked into it. They got sucked into the hatred. They got sucked into an environment where no longer were they looking for answers. No longer were they looking for solutions. No longer were they looking to engage in dialogue. All they wanted to do was to win. To prove that they were right. And even when they couldn't win, because they would die. They would die. No, the Rebbe said that they wanted to die. They were willing to. They were so holy. They were willing to die to have a chance to bring the Torah. But on the simple level, they were willing. They knew that this wouldn't end well for them. But they became so, these were partisan, so set in their way, so committed to their camp that they couldn't see any way out of it. And if this is true politically, it's also true personally in our own lives, in our own relationships, in our own friendships, in our own families. We get into such a Korach and his congregation. We get into such a one-sided version of our agenda where it's no longer about the other person anymore. It's no longer about Moshe. It's no longer about I was holy, not holy. It becomes now about self-fulfilling my own desire, my own, I'm locked in, I can't even escape from my own machlek. That, my friends, is the story for us of trying to not be like Korach. Not like the men of Korach. Not the Korach is again to be like Trump or like Biden. To not to be like the men that get sucked into it. I see people get sucked into it. Personally, politically, religiously, the people on the other side are also good. They also have a reason. They also have the same thing in personal fights. Not the people, they also have, there's two sides to every story. If you're open to hearing two sides to the story. Not that's the man of Korach. Okay, my friends, Laila Tov. Good morning of Tuesday in India. Oh, cool. I love India. I was there for a month. India's a cool place. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Art. Thank you, Brenda. Good to see you. Thank you, Luis, all the way from Australia. Well, next month, okay. So here's the schedule. Just so you know, next Sunday will be a Gimel Tammuz evening of inspiration. Rabbi Chadek actually spoken today. He'll share some personal stories. He's the Rebbe, famous Rabbi Chadek's grandson. So he grew up as a kid. He literally hung out in his grandfather's office. So like he was up close to the Rebbe in the way that, as a little kid, he was just saying his things. He was hanging around. So if he opens up, he's a little like his grandfather. He's a little hard to get to open. If he opens up, he'll have some amazing stories to share. That's Sunday night, 7 p.m. Monday, I realized today, is a planning and zoning meeting. It's not even a commission meeting. Send it a second email. It's a planning and zoning meeting. It's in City Hall, but there's two meetings that we have to get approved by. So Monday, July 8th, is a planning and zoning meeting. And then after that meeting is a city commission meeting, which is on Wednesday, August 23rd, I believe. It's in the email I sent out this afternoon, this evening. It's Wednesday, August 21st to 23rd. It's a Wednesday, towards the end of August. Also at 6:30. Be there. Hopefully, I'm sure we'll have no problems, but I think it's very important for the city to see that we're united and that there's a strong presence of the Jewish community. I think that the message will be very, very important. It's open meeting. And there's a big room. There's a lot of seats in there. If you've ever been in the City Hall chamber, it's not 200 seats. I don't know. Hopefully it won't be that long. Hopefully we're on the agenda. They didn't make the agenda, the schedule yet. Karina called them today to ask. Did they make it? Only make it on Wednesday, but whatever. 6:30, and then hopefully there might still be class at 8 o'clock. I'm saying if it's I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, Ravit has a good question. Thank you, Joe. Good luck at the meeting. We'll see. Maybe not no class. I don't know if my mind will be. Well, time to take a field trip. Maybe ask the one if my brain. I'm not preparing a formal class for sure. Not that my brain's not going to be there. I'm going to the dentist to the meeting. Yes. Okay. Anyway, Ravit wants to know why did Korach merit a parsha in his name? That's a great question. The message for us: Korach was actually a holy man on a higher spiritual level. He had good intent, whatever. Teach us a message. Korach means kerach. Kerach is like ice that separates. It's cold. Anyway, thank you, everyone. I'm glad you enjoyed the class. Laila Tov. I don't think we'll do a class next week. At least not on Facebook. It won't be a formal.